Hey, what's going on, everybody? Keep my music playing a little bit. Maybe. All right. So, what is up? Welcome to the Bible study live stream. We're going a little bit later tonight. I usually do these around 6 p.m., but I'm actually having more people watch around 9. So, what happens if I go later, Nikki? I don't know. Yeah, welcome to the Bible study. Welcome to the Bible study, guys. I hope if you don't like the Bible and you don't like us studying the Bible, this probably isn't the live stream for you. If you're interested in it, then this is definitely a place to be. I've been doing it the past few nights. I didn't do it over the weekend just because I needed to spend some time with wifey, but we're going to get going here again. And we first did Matthew 18. And then we started reading the book of Zephaniah. And the reason that we're kind of it seems like we're bouncing around is because what I was planning on doing is like read a verse off of the YouVersion Bible app. They do verse of the day. And what I was going to do is take that verse of the day and then try to figure out the context. Because what happens a lot of times with these verses of the day is you'll see it, you'll read it, you'll be inspired, but you'll be inspired by a meaning that's not really in the context of the verse. And so I did it with Matthew 18. I don't remember what the verse was on that one. And then I saw a verse, Zephaniah 2, verse 3. And so we've been going through Zephaniah, and I started at the beginning because Zephaniah is only 3 chapters long. So really to get the context, you have to read the entire book. And so I started with Zephaniah 1, then Zephaniah 2, then we were in Zephaniah 3, but we had to cut it short because it was Good Friday, and we had a Good Friday service at my church, and I didn't want to miss that, so we cut it short. And then I was going to start back over, or I was going to start from Zephaniah 3, verse 13. So that's where we're at. So that's where we're going to jump in. We're going to jump right in. I'm going to try to recap a little bit. Actually, I'm not even here. Also, I am on, because I'm streaming on Facebook, YouTube, and Periscope, which is Twitter. And so if you're on YouTube or Twitter, I'm not in the chat there. I'm on Facebook chat. I actually have it open right now on my phone. And so if you type a comment or anything like that, or you have an insight, like if we're reading and you have an insight and you want to jump in, like type it out and I'll address it, when I get to it, when I read it and I see it, I'll address it. We'll talk about it a little bit. And, I want this to be a collaborative kind of thing, because nobody finds understanding in a vacuum. Like you have to, I feel like you have to have outside sources and experience, is the best way to do it. So that's what I want. I want to talk to you guys. I want to see what your insights are. If the Spirit's leading you, where is it leading you? And so let's start out. Again, I want to recap. So Zephaniah 1. So Zephaniah was a prophet back in the time of King. Let me go back here. It was King Josiah. Yeah, Zephaniah 1 during King Josiah, king of Judah. So what we know is that in biblical history, you have the kingdom of Jerusalem, you have Israel, and then Israel and Judah split apart. They became 2 separate kingdoms. 12 tribes went to the north to start Israel, and then Judah stayed in southern part. So you had 2 different kingdoms out of the entire nation of Israel. 2 different kingdoms, Israel and then Judah. And Judah is where the kingdom of Israel was. Now, at this time, when Zephaniah gets his word from the Lord, Israel has already been taken into captivity by Assyria. And so it's been taken over by the Assyrians. You still have the southern kingdom of Judah that's still there, and it's ruled by Josiah. Now Josiah, the king of Judah, he's having battles, and he's kind of at war with Egypt at this time. And Zephaniah gets this word, he gets this message from the Lord, and it's actually a prophecy about the impending Babylonian conquer. That's what Zephaniah is about. It's this impending judgment that's going to take place at the hands of Babylon. So in chapter 1, we get this judgment toward Judah and Israel. One thing I did note is, you can look at the notes. I usually post the notes on my Facebook page and Instagram. You can check that out. If you're having a hard time finding my Facebook page, you can literally just type matnews.biz on your address bar, and then boom, you'll go right to my Facebook page. One thing I didn't know, and I thought it was fascinating, was that in Zephaniah 1 Zephaniah 1 verses 2 through 3 is kind of this picture of reverse creation. Hey, what's up, Josh? I'm glad you could join, man. Hold on, let me wave at all these people virtually. I'm waving at Nikki, even though she's like right behind me. You can see her over my shoulder. Right there. So, got distracted by Joshua Coleman. Thanks, Joshua Coleman. Okay, so anyways, so verse 2 through 3, verse 2 and 3, 2 3, it's kind of this reverse creation. You know, you have God, and he says, I will destroy everything from the face of the earth. And one thing you have to do is, when you see this terminology of face of the earth, you have to remember that the Jews didn't know about the planet of Earth. Like, they didn't have any context for that. All they knew is the land was around them. So when you have this Jewish word, either Eretz, or actually Eretz, it would mean the land. And then when Jewish word, Hebrew word, Eretz, is the land. But then there was another word that's used in verse 3, and it's Adamah, which is dust, or like the soil. And so it's this picture of reverse creation. In verse 3, it talks about, I'm going to destroy people, animals. I'm going to destroy the birds in the sky, the fish in the sea. And that's in reverse order of the way that God created it. He did the fish, birds, animals, and then people. So it's this reverse order. That's immediately what came to my mind. And then he says in verse 3, he says, I will remove humanity from the face of the earth. And it's almost this Hebrew play of words, because he says, I'm going to remove Ha'adam from the face of Ha'adamah. So it's this Adamah. So it's literally this taking Adam. He's going to remove Adam from the dust. He's going to take Adam away from the dust, or destroy him from the dust. So it's this picture of just complete and utter reversing creation. And I thought that was a cool insight. You know, it's something that when we think of, you know, removing humanity from the face of the earth, it's like, man, that's harsh judgment. But taking that context of completely and utterly, almost like feeling sorrowful for the creation itself, and wanting to destroy it from its own making, its own material. I want to destroy humanity from the very thing that it was created from. You know, I feel like that has a little bit more depth and a little bit more tone. And I think that the Jews back in that day, Israel back in that day, would have gotten that. They would have gotten that context. They would have gotten the creation context and the reversal of creation. So anyways, chapter 1, it focuses in on the judgment for Judah and the judgment for even the surrounding nations. The reason I think that happens is because when Babylon takes over, they come from the north. And so when they come from the north, they're going to kind of spread out and take over the sides and then come in. I don't know if that's exactly what happened. I'll definitely know that when I get there to some of that history. But the nations that God talks about in Zephaniah 1, it gets very specific about those side nations. And that's what is being taken over. Those nations are also being judged for various reasons. And then when we get into chapter 2, it goes a little bit more broad, and it talks a lot more about the side nations, and talks a lot more, or actually, I'm sorry, one talks about Israel and Judah itself, and then chapter 2 goes into the surrounding nations, and there's a lot of parallels in there. One parallel that I saw is in verse 5 of chapter 2, when God talks about these nations that are on the sea coast, and it talks about how all these sea coast nations are going to be destroyed, and that the pasture lands are going to be used by the shepherds and the pens of the flocks. And then verse 7, it says they will lie down in the evening. But it reminded me of lying down in green pastures. And it reminded me of Psalms 23. And so the theme kind of follows through chapters 1, chapter 2, and we see this judgment upon Judah and the surrounding nations. And that's kind of where we're at when we come to 3. And then 3 goes back to, instead of these other nations and everything, it brings its focus back to Jerusalem specifically, because it talks about the city. Chapter 3, verse 1 says, "Beware the filthy stained city, the city filled with oppressors." And we know that this is talking about Jerusalem specifically the city. It talks about the rulers, the princes, is what it says in verse 3, which is also translated as officials. It talks about rulers, which can also be translated as judges. So these people who are kind of influencing over the way that Jerusalem is run. You know, it equates them to fierce, equates them to roaring lions and wolves in the desert. So predators and scavengers. You know, and it says they'll devour their prey by morning, or they'll they do not gnaw at the morning, so they don't have anything left on the bone in the morning. But let's go down here to verse 13, which is where we left off in verse 12. And let's go here to verse 13. Let me pull it up here for everybody to see. Here we go. Pull it up on the screen here for a second so you guys can see it. Yep. All right, so now we're in verse 13. All right, we've kind of gone over the context. We're talking about judgment on Judah, judgment on the nations surrounding Judah, and now specifically we're talking about Jerusalem, and we're talking about the reasons why God is bringing about this judgment. So, right here in verse 13, let's go to it. It says, "The Israelites who remain will not act deceitfully." And then we have this footnote here. And again, I use the NET Bible when I do my Bible studies, because like the NET Bible, there's a footnote like everywhere. There's footnotes all over the place. And that's a great Bible to have, because it gives you these different opportunities to interpret it in different ways. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because you get closer to what it's getting down to. Like, what is the actual interpretation for this? So you see here, verse 13 talks about that remnant. The remnant will not act deceitfully. They will not lie, and a deceitful tongue will not be found in their mouths. Indeed, they will graze peacefully like sheep and lie down. What's this? 43. The words peacefully like sheep are supplied in translation for clarification. So, when you see stuff like that, when it says stuff like the words peacefully like sheep are supplied in translation for clarification, so you can pretty much nix that. In indeed they will graze and lie down. Now, one way you can check that out, and this is what I do a lot, and it's something that always interests me, is to go back and like actually like look at the Hebrew. Now, Hebrew is a language that I'm learning. Hebrew is a language that I'm learning, and I'm learning it. So I'm not like some master, at Hebrew. I just know a little bit, and I know how to look. I know what I'm looking for. I know how to look for it. So let's see. And then again, I think I know how I look for it, but that could just be me getting in my head. So here we go. 13. The remnant of Israel shall do no wrong. Now, see, that sounds a little bit different than will not act deceitfully. It says it will do no wrong. I wonder what word that is. Now look at this. So the Hebrew word. Oh wow. So this Hebrew word here for what they're labeling here as deceitful is actually this Hebrew word. I'm going over this here. And actually it's that, right? I think. It's actually this word right here. So this right here is like an ah sound, like aqua. So ah. I think this is silent. I think this is a schwa. Sometimes the schwa will have an e sound, but sometimes it's silent. I believe that this is silent. So I think these two. I think this is a syllable. So I think that's av. Or you can also transliterate it as aw, like AW, but I'm going to go with AV for now. And then this is another syllable. This is the laments that makes an L sound. This is comments that makes an ah sound, and then you have the het, which gives you an ah sound. So this is avla. Now, what I found interesting was this root word, because the root for it, the root word, this little symbol right here is a skull, and it gives you an E sound. So you have E, and this is a, I forgot the name of it. But it doesn't give you a sound. The sound is supplied by the vowel here. So you have E, and then this is a V sound. B, this is another E sound. What does that sound like? Evel, or evil. Evel. And they're translating as deceitful, but then you have Zephaniah, which is actually the Hebrew text, and it's actually based off of the more recent Hebrew text, which is based off the Masoretic text, and they do it as injustice or unrighteousness. So the Israelites who remain will not act unjustly, if that's a word, or unrighteously, but I want to focus on this unjustly. And this is the reason why, because if you go back to Zephaniah when we were talking about in Zephaniah 1, and we were talking about this destruction and what God was claiming over Judah. unjustly. I know it's in here, and I know it was in chapter 1 because it had to do with this. It had to do with this right here. But it was this repeated theme. It was this repeated theme that was in 1. No, I'm not making it up, guys. What do you think, Nikki? Maybe it was in 2. It was. Maybe it was in 2. Maybe it was 2-1 here. Yes. Here it is. So 2, verse 3. Seek the Lord's favor, all you humble people of the land who have obeyed my commands. And then if you go to this footnote 9 right here, it's this term mishpat, which mishpat, the word can mean justice. Or in this case, the phrase could be translated, who have promoted the justice God demands. So when you have this word right here, and then here's one of the translations is unjustly. So the Israelites who remain will not. Let me erase some of this stuff here. Erase some of these little. Will not act deceitfully, or is it unjustly or unjustly? We'll say unjustly. Or because apparently that's evil is the opposite of mishpat, which is to act justly, right? But here God in verse 13, he's saying that these people aren't going to act that way. They're not going to act unjustly. They will not lie. Deceitful tongue will not be found in their mouths. Indeed, they will graze and lie down. And it's so funny because that was actually what I was going to look for. Graze and lie down. Yeah, see right here in this translation, it is, only such as these shall graze and lie down with none to trouble them. To pasture, to graze. They will indeed graze and lie down. No one will terrify them. And then here we go to verse 14. Shout for joy, daughter Zion. What is this? This phrase is used as an epithet for the city and the nation. Daughter may seem extraneous in English, but consciously joins the various epithets and metaphors of Israel and Jerusalem as a woman, a device used to evoke sympathy from the reader. Let's see, shout out. I hate when I cross stuff out when I'm trying to underline it. I'm just trying to underline it. shout out Israel. Be happy and boast with all your heart, daughter Jerusalem. Daughter Zion and daughter Jerusalem. The Lord has removed the judgment against you. He has turned back your enemy. Israel's king, the Lord, is in your midst. This harkens back to what we were talking about in 2, or was it the beginning of 3? I think it's the beginning of 3. Yep, it's the beginning of 3. Because when we were talking about the beginning of 3, this theme of residing, or you can see it right here, the just Lord resides within her. Talking about the just Lord resides within Israel. And then in one of the verses, and Nikki brought my attention to it just by asking the question. Further looking into it, there was this idea. Oh, I didn't save the notes from yesterday, which is my bad. But there was this idea that Israel was going to be displaced. She was going to be displaced. And so there's this theme of residence, dwelling, and then having the dwelling removed. But we can see that here in 15, we see this kind of theme, this kind of refrain is kind of brought back, dwelling, to dwell. You no longer need to fear disaster. On that day, they will say to Jerusalem, don't be afraid, Zion. Your hands must not be paralyzed from panic. Okay? There's that. Some things are just kind of straightforward. I don't feel like it's necessary to go too far in detail, because I think sometimes you can almost overkill it. You know, when you're trying to figure out what stuff means, you know, you kind of try to go too deep, and you try to assign meaning to things that are just really plain, the way that they're spoken. And that's coming from somebody who literally, like, you know, crosses out the fact that it's talking about sheep, you know, because it's not really in the original translation. So here we go. So 16, on that day they will say to Jerusalem, don't be afraid, Zion. Your hands must be paralyzed from panic, or your hands must not be paralyzed from panic. And then it says here, 47, your hands must not go limp. The Lord your God is in your midst. Look at that. He is a warrior who can deliver. He takes great delight in you. He renews you by his love. Now remember, God's talking about bringing judgment on Judah. So all of this right here, he's talking to the remnant. This whole message is for the remnant. This isn't for, you know, if Israel turns, you know, and everything like that. God talked about in the first chapter, he says, you know, change now while you have time, because the judgment's coming. Change while you have time, and you may be hidden from what's coming. You may be a part of that remnant. And so God here is saying that this is what he's going to say to the remnant, that the Lord is there in your midst, that he's a warrior who can deliver you. He takes great delight in you. He renews you by his love. He shouts for joy over you. Now, one thing I'm trying not to do is I'm trying not to read Jesus in this yet, or final judgment. I'm trying to, or maybe not even that, not that necessarily. Maybe what I'm trying to say is I'm trying not to read the New Testament into this yet, right? Because that's not how you find context. How you find context is you read it based on the audience it was written for. And so who is this written for? This whole book is written for Judah and Jerusalem. That's what this whole book is written for them. It's not written for me. It's not written for you. It doesn't mean you can't pull truth out of it, and it doesn't mean you can't pull principles of godliness out of it, because you can. You totally can. I can totally get things out of this. But I'm not the audience that this was written for. Right? The audience this was written for is Judah, specifically Judah and specifically Jerusalem, the Jews who are the Israelites who are about to be taken to exile in Babylon. They're going to remember these words while they're in captivity and they're in exile. These are the words that they are going to remember. And we can take cues from those, but this specifically is not written for us. So that's one thing. I'm not trying to read Jesus into this yet. I'm not trying to read the New Testament into this. There are promises in here that lead us to the New Testament logic, but right now this is for Judah in the upcoming event of Babylon. So just think about that. Keep your context. That's actually a good thing. I should put that on a t-shirt, Nikki. Keep your context. Keep your context. Okay? So now let's go down here to verse 18. As for those who grieve because they cannot attend the festival, I took them away from you. They became tribute and were a source of shame for you. What's this? 51. Excuse me. It says, the ones grieving from an assembly I gathered from you, they were tribute upon her, a reproach. Any translation of this difficult verse must be provisional at best. The present translation assumes three things. One, preposition prefixed to assembly. So the preposition men prefixed to assembly is casual. The individuals are sorrowing because of the assemblies or festivals they are no longer able to hold. Then it says Masat, I think it was Masat means tribute and refers to the exiled people being treated as spoils of war. The third feminine singular suffix refers to personified Jerusalem, which is addressed earlier in the verse. As for those who grieve because they cannot attend the festivals, I took them away from you. This is Judah or Israel. They became tribute and were a source of shame to you. At that time I will deal with those who mistreated you. I will rescue the lame sheep. And this is actually another theme that's prevalent, is this idea of sheep. I will rescue the lame sheep and gather together the scattered sheep. I will take away their humiliation and make the whole earth admire and respect them. What does 52 say? The word sheep is applied for clarification, as in Micah 4:6-7. The exiles are here as injured and scattered sheep, whom the divine shepherd rescued from danger. Oh, so I wonder if sheep is only mentioned once in the translation here. Let's look. This has it in brackets. Excuse me. I'm trying to find this word here to save. To limp, to be lame. So sheep is actually nowhere even mentioned here, unless it's mentioned somewhere around here. So that's interesting. So if you look at the Hebrew, this word sheep is not even mentioned in here. It's not even mentioned. So it says, "I will rescue the lame and gather together the scattered." And then translations are providing the word sheep because they think that clarifies this terminology. Now there is a place in earlier sheep. Yeah. See, there's multiple places where it talks about sheep. Where'd you go? Saw you. Eats really like sheep. That's 3. This is also 3. See all those. Okay, it's not going through the whole thing here, but I know there's a spot here where Jerusalem and Judah and the remnant specifically is equated to sheep. That's like actually in the translation. But I think what it's doing is just for clarification. You have these translations adding sheep in every now and again when it talks about grazing and lame and scattered, just for clarification, in case you didn't get that. I personally, but I'm no scholar, so don't quote me on this. But like for me, it's almost unnecessary to put sheep in there, especially twice. I don't feel like it's necessary. But anyways, I'm gonna take away their translation and make the whole earth admire it. Now let's go here. I think this is the last verse 20. At that time, I will lead you. At that time, I gather you together. Be sure of this: I will make all the nations of the earth respect and admire you. When you see me, restore you, says the Lord. That is why so that's what we have here. That's the whole, like that concludes Zephaniah altogether. So Zephaniah 1, what did we have? Zephaniah 1. Get this started. It was point story. Judgment. Specifically judgment for Judah, surrounding nation, or I think it was specifically Judah in this first book here. Oh boy, here we go. I just want to make sure here. Yes. So chapter 1. Chapter 1 is judgment. It's this warning of judgment, and it's this warning of judgment specifically on Judah and the people of Israel that are still there, people of Israel. Then we go down to Zephaniah 2. It's this continuing judgment, but then it's adding on surrounding nations. But then at the very tail end of it, it begins to bring a message of hope, especially for a remnant, right? And then you have Zephaniah 3, and it's specifically talking about Jerusalem and why they're going to be judged. But then it talks about future hope and a remnant. So that's what this whole book is about. This whole book is this judgment that's coming to them as Babylon. That's what this whole book is about, and it's just giving the people of Israel this coming warning about this judgment. That's what this whole book is about, and how there's hope in the remnant, that there's still going to be people there. They're going to lie down in green pastures. They're going to find their hope in the Lord. They're going, and God's going to gather them together like sheep, and He's going to restore them. Future hope in the remnant and future hope in restoration. So, guys, you're going to be judged. The nations around you are going to be judged. Surrounding nations are going to be judged. This is why. But don't worry. Right? Don't worry. Because you will be restored through my handwriting. Especially with this thing, because it's not like, it's very hard to look at the screen up here while you're writing down there. So restored through a remnant. And you can look at this as a messianic promise and everything like that. But I mean, to be honest, this is really just about this. This is what it's about, right here. So when you read verses like, and this was the verse of the day, and it was a week ago. It was 2, verse 3. It says, Seek the Lord's favor, all you humble people of the land who have obeyed His commands. Strive to do what is right, strive to be humble. Maybe you will be protected on the day of the Lord's angry judgment. I mean, we'll see that, and we'll see that verse on Bible, the Bible app. And we'll say, man, that speaks to my soul. And all we did, especially during the time right now, we got COVID-19, and people are going to go to this verse and they're going to say, if I seek the Lord, what this verse is telling me is, if I seek the Lord's face, or if I seek the Lord's favor, and I'm humble, and I obey his commands, and I strive to do what is right, and I strive to be humble, then I'm going to be protected on the Lord's on the day of the Lord's angry judgment. And that is not what that verse is saying. What you can take out of that verse is what the Lord wants from you, which is he wants you to be humble. He wants you to obey his commands. But then again, like, look back at that verse. Like, if we look back at that verse and then we look at what the translation is, it says the present translation assumes the Hebrew term mishpat here, which refers to God's covenantal requirements and is a synonym for the law. The word can also mean justice and could refer more specifically to the principles of justice contained in the law. In this case, the phrase could be translated, you have promoted the justice God demands, which means that you do right by other people. And then in the next verse, or then following that verse, strive to do what is right, strive to be humble. And this is you may be protected on the day of the Lord's judgment. And this isn't talking about any old day of judgment. This is talking to the people in Judah who are about to be taken over by Babylon. That's who that's talking to. So what we can get out of that is character that God's looking for. But this is not talking to us about protecting us from judgment. That is not what this verse is telling us. That is not a promise to us. That is a promise to the people of Israel in that time. That if they do these things, they may be protected from, or they may be hidden from the Lord's judgment of Babylon. That's what it's talking about. So, that was the book of Zephaniah. So what we're going to do next time is, let me close this out. Go ahead and go back to full screen here. Let me double check, make sure we're back to screen. It did. So what we're going to do next time is, see what comes up on the Bible app, and if it's and the thing is what I like to do is I like to take the unclear verses or verses that are like typically translated one or typically taken as one way, and I'm like, I don't know if that's necessarily what that means. And that's the thing is I will say I don't know if that's necessarily what that means. That doesn't mean that that's not what it says it means, because it could very well be that, like, I read into this verse and I'm like, that's exactly what this verse is saying. But I don't necessarily think it's so I want to look it up, and I want to make sure, because I think one thing that the church is lacking today is biblical literacy. And that is oh man, I just noticed I can close that on the notes and I didn't say one. Crap. Sorry guys. But let me get back to what I was saying. Is that a lot of people lack not necessarily the ability, because I think everybody has the ability to do what I did. I think so. But I think a lot of people lack the motivation to do that. And biblical literacy is something that we lack in our church today. Taking a book of the Bible and reading it in its context and not taking it out of context. That's something that we lack today. I was actually listening to the Bible Project today, and they're going over the parables. And the first thing I did with this kind of series that I'm doing, this kind of new thing that I'm doing, which I want to keep going, but what am I trying to say here? Oh, the parables. A lot of people take the parables in this allegorical way. And the first thing they try to do is they try to read it into, well, how is this applied in my life first before looking at the biblical context of it. And so when we went to Matthew chapter 18, there's two parables there. The parable of the shepherd and the sheep, the one who goes after the 99, or the one who goes after the one leaves 99. There's that one, and then there's also the parable of the slave and the slave owner. And if you look at them and try to apply them to your life, it loses context, because you lose the context of the entire chapter, Matthew chapter 18. You lose that whole context because you're trying to figure out, how do I apply this to my life? And if you remember that in Matthew 18, the question is, who's the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? That's the whole question. That's the question that Jesus is answering the entire time. He never breaks his train of thought until the end of chapter 18. And that's what I'm trying to get to, where I'm looking at things in their context. So I don't read Zephaniah 2:3 as like, well, if I do these things, then the Lord may save me at a time of judgment. No. This doesn't apply to me. That judgment doesn't apply to me. That judgment is for Judah. That judgment is for the people of Israel at a time, right before Babylon's coming down. But what I get out of it is especially if you read through it, is kind of the way you should be acting. A lot of the things I got were justice, humbleness, righteousness, and that God dwells. God's dwelling. Where God is going to dwell. Those are a lot of the themes that were brought up. Peace was one. Those are all these things. If I begin to try to apply every little piece to me, I lose the point. And so that's the point of this whole thing that I'm doing. Is I want to make sure that I am getting the right context, and that I'm studying it with you. And that's another reason why when I started this, this isn't a sermon that I'm preaching to people. This is me reading the Bible and reading it for everything that it's worth. And I could be doing more. This is just like a first step. If I were to really want to dig down and dig deep, like I could spend days on this. I did. I spent a week and a day on one book, and the book is 3 chapters long. And this is what we need to start doing a little bit more with our Bibles, is digging in deep. And that's another thing I'm trying to combat too, because so I'm on TikTok now at MattNews.biz. You can check me out on TikTok. But one of the trends that's going around for Christian TikTokers is to do like Bible facts. Did you know? Here's a Bible fact. Did you know? And then, or they try to, like the list of all the names in Hebrew down in Genesis, and then they take those names and they break down what their meanings are, and then they like make a whole new sentence out of it, and then the sentence explains the gospel, quote unquote. I'm not saying that's not what it does. I don't know. I haven't listened to it. It's not something that I've done myself, but it's kind of like they're almost making that what those verses is about, and it's not what the intention that was being written in. I'm sure that can be pulled out of it, but is that what it was written for? That's the question we need to be asking. Is that what that was written for? And I think that a lot of Christians are, and even myself, like there's things I should know now. I've been a Christian for almost 18 years now, so it's like I should know a lot more than what I do know, because I've been a Christian for 18 years. But my first few years, my first almost decade of Christianity was me trying to prove that the Bible was, and trying to prove the Bible rather than trying to understand the Bible. And I think that's what I'm going to leave off on, is let's make that the more important thing. Is let's try to make sure that we understand the Bible rather than feeling as though we have to prove the Bible. Love you guys, and I'll see you tomorrow, and I'll have a whole new verse that we're going to try to break down, figure out what it means next time on this isn't a show, so it's, this Bible study stream. All right, guys, talk to you later. We'll see you